And text 27 says, although no one in the material world is equal to or greater than Lord Shiva, and although his unimpeachable character is followed by great souls to dismantle the mass of meshness, he nevertheless remains as if a devil to give salvation to all devotees of the Lord. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Lord Shiva's uncivilized, devilish characteristics are never abominable, because he teaches the sincere devotees of the Lord how to practice detachment from material enjoyment. He is called Mahadeva, or the greatest of all demigods, and no one is equal to or greater than him in the material world. He is almost equal with Lord Vishnu. Although he always associates with Maya, Durga, he is above the reactionary stage of the three modes of material nature. And although he is in charge of devilish characters in the mode of ignorance, he is not affected by such association. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare
Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna, Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Rama
Rama
Rama,
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Hare.
Hare.
So it's very difficult sometimes for people to understand Lord Shiva, because uh, he helps the most fallen people, uh, the ones that are rejects by even gurus. He tries to help them. So sometimes people misinterpret him because he is dealing with the lowest level of people in the world. Uh, but uh, he is giving an example of how to act properly. And how is that? How to practice detachment from material enjoyment. This is what turns people, good people, into bad people, because of their desire for material enjoyment. And because of that, he's called Mahadeva, or the greatest of all demigods. And no one is equal to or greater than him in the material world. And that's a very important point. You have the material worlds and you have the spiritual worlds. In the material world, there's no one greater than him. But in the spiritual world, Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. So there are different levels of, let's say, responsibility and achievement by devotees. And Lord Shiva, amongst devotees in the material world, is the greatest of all. But when you consider the spiritual world also, then Krishna is the greatest of all. And he is many times greater than Lord Shiva. However, uh, there's a material world and there's a spiritual world. And Lord Shiva, he tries to help the most fallen people in the material world. And uh, and here Prabhupada says that Lord Shiva's uncivilized, devilish characteristics are never abominable, because he teaches the sincere devotees of the Lord how to practice detachment from material enjoyment. Now that's very important. Detachment from material enjoyment. When we engage in material enjoyment, we forget Krishna and we become selfish. In other words, we become interested mostly in our own material pleasures and not so much in pleasing the Lord by our activities. So the let's say the qualities of a devotee is that his number one uh, purpose is to please the spiritual master and Krishna. And that when someone is affected by materialistic desires, their number one purpose is to please their own senses. So there's a big, big difference between the two. Uh, now, Lord Shiva, it says here, no one in the material world is equal to or greater than Lord Shiva. So, like I said, there's a material world and a spiritual world. Krishna is the Supreme Personality, Godhead, in the material world and the spiritual world. But in the material world, uh, it says here, no one in the material world is equal to or greater than Lord Shiva. So that means amongst everyone in the material world, except Lord Krishna, who's always in the spiritual world, right? Lord Shiva is the best. And although his unimpeachable character is followed by great souls to dismantle the mass of nescience, nescience is another way of saying ignorance, he nevertheless remains as if a devil to give salvation to all devotees of the Lord. Now that's a hard sentence to understand, because if you remain as if a devil, that means you're not a devil, but it looks like you're a devil. And why? Well, he wants to seem to be a devilish type of person so that he can associate with real devils, but he's actually trying to convert them to become real devotees. So, purport by Srila Prabhupada, Lord Shiva's uncivilized, devilish characteristics are never abominable, because he teaches the sincere devotees of the Lord how to practice detachment from material enjoyment. That is what is misunderstood sometimes. But his real goal in life is to teach sincere devotees of the Lord how to practice detachment from material enjoyment. So now that's going to be the difference in life between a devotee and a non-devotee. A devotee at one point will make a vow and with determination to give up material enjoyment, or in other words, detachment from material enjoyment. And materialistic people cannot give up their attachment from material enjoyment. So that's the difference between a devotee and a non-devotee. The devotee can give up attachment to material enjoyment and take up attachment to Krishna and spiritual enjoyment. Now, what's the difference between material enjoyment and spiritual enjoyment? Material enjoyment is for oneself, selfishly, without consideration of Krishna. And spiritual enjoyment is when you engage in pleasing Krishna, and that's your enjoyment. You please the Lord, not engaging in sense gratification selfishly for yourself. Is this easy to understand? Well, you might understand the words, but actually to do this, you have to be determined not to deviate from the path of a pure devotional service. it's very easy to be deviated. And that's why we're hearing about the pregnancy of DT in the evening. It's an example of a very good person who is deviating because they can't control their desire for illicit activity. And they can't follow strictly the rules and regulations. And these are the things that put people in trouble when they have what you would basically call selfish desires, even though they know what's right. Even though they know what's right, but they can't control themselves. And why is that? Because they think that they can get away with it. I asked a person once, I said, if you could get rich by cheating and lying, would you do it? This was a young man who was like 18 years old. He just graduated from, he just finished high school and he was going to college. And he said, I would do it if I thought I could get away with it. So, and there was, I knew this one person, he was a very, very nice man. He was somewhat helpful to devotees. And he had a very nice wife, very, very nice wife. And he was cheating on his wife. And he got caught, of course. Everybody gets caught doing that. And I asked him, I said, well, why did you do this? He said, well, I thought I could get away with it. I'm not kidding. He's a very smart person. Right? He said, I thought I could get away with it. So this is a type of what you would call disingenuous behavior. Disingenuous, a nice word. It means not being serious, being frivolous. Here a person is well educated, they have a wonderful wife, they have a nice house, they have a nice car, they have nice income and everything, but they think they can get away with it, to engage in illicit activity. Very, very dangerous. And so, on the other hand, here you have someone like Lord Shiva. It looks like he's uncivilized. He seems to have devilish characteristics, but his devilish characteristics are never abominable because his whole purpose is to teach the sincere devotees of the Lord how to practice detachment from material enjoyment. Now, how can he teach that if he looks like he's a devilish person? Well, he gives up material enjoyment. He engages in all kinds of tapasya, or self, let's say, he's not involved in self-indulgence. He's involved in giving up self-indulgence.
Austerity.
Yeah, he's involved in austerity. And therefore, here's in the purport it says, Lord Shiva's uncivilized, devilish characteristics are never abominable. In other words, are never horrible, because he teaches the sincere devotees of the Lord how to practice detachment from material enjoyment. Now, we have to think about this statement, Lord Shiva's uncivilized, devilish characteristics are never abominable. Well, it's difficult to understand this because you would think if someone has devilish characteristics, it should be abominable. But in the case of Lord Shiva, it's not abominable. Why? Because he's teaching the sincere devotees of the Lord how to practice detachment from material enjoyment. Now let's analyze this statement. He's trying to teach the devotees detachment from material enjoyment. Now, there is material enjoyment and there's spiritual enjoyment. Material enjoyment is usually sinful. Spiritual enjoyment is transcendental. And what's the difference between the two? The material enjoyment, one wants to please themselves. And you can see this even at a very young age of children. Like let's say there's Christmas, and there's two brothers. So Christmas morning, everybody, all the kids run down to see what's under the Christmas tree, their presents under the Christmas tree. Yeah. So let's say there's a little bit older boy and a younger boy, they're brothers. And they run down and then they have the right to, open up the packages, rip the package covering and then see what their present is. So the one boy opens up his present and it's a remote control truck. And another boy opens up his present and it's a book. So he looks at the book, and then sees his brother, he got this remote control truck. And he's really upset because he wants the remote control truck. So they get into a fight right away. And he tries to take the remote control truck from his brother. Right? So these are young kids. They're not trained to be bad, but they have the tendency of being, let's say, covetous or upset when someone else has something better than they do, right? Or seemingly better than they do. Right? So then they get the two little brothers, they get into fight because the one brother that got the book is upset that the other brother, he got a remote control truck. So this desire for sense enjoyment is dangerous because it can cause a person to commit what you would say abominable activities, going up to even killing someone. So therefore, Lord Shiva, he seems to be uncivilized. I mean, by the way he's dressed. He's dressed by the dust of the crematorium where people are burned after death. And he has a snake around his neck and things like that. So he looks like a devil, right? Doesn't look like, a pure devotee. That's why, you have to judge a person not by what they look like, but how they act. And there might be reasons why a person is acting, seeming to be a non-devotee by their physical look, but actually they're actually a pure devotee. So how do you judge who is a pure devotee, who's not a devotee? It's not by the way they dress, it's by the way they act. And sometimes, even the pure devotees are extremely humble, and the non-devotees think that they're stupid because they're not interested in what ordinary people are interested in, meat eating, gambling, illicit sex, intoxication, and so forth. So they're often ridiculed by the Vishayis, the sense gratifiers. Also, sometimes in school, kids who are academically, uh, proficient are harassed by other kids who are jealous of them, and and it's hard for the kids who are interested in being educated. It's very hard for them. Sometimes they commit suicide because they're always being criticized by their peers, and as if it's wrong to be academically, proficient. This happens a lot in public schools. Okay, so Lord Shiva's uncivilized, devilish characteristics are never abominable because he teaches the sincere devotees of the Lord how to practice detachment from material enjoyment. Now, this is a big, big statement. Now we're talking about, how to separate the men from the boys. In other words, that's a statement in English. Separate the men from the boys. The boys are a little bit frivolous. They don't take life so seriously, especially Krishna consciousness. And the men are people who really take Krishna consciousness seriously and follow all the rules and regulations and so forth. So it's a way that people talk in English. Separate the men from the boys. The boys are, let's say, insincere, young. Not that they're young, but they're not taking life seriously about becoming Krishna conscious. And the men, the people that realize that look, sense gratification. Yes, there's two types of sense gratification. There's licit and illicit sense gratification. So licit sense gratification is following the principles of Krishna consciousness. So that doesn't mean that when you're following Krishna consciousness, you don't eat, you don't sleep, you don't bathe, you don't do this, you don't do that. You do all those things, but you do them according to Krishna conscious principles. And illicit activities are doing the same thing, but not following the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness. So here we see a very nice lady, Diti. She's from a very exalted family, but she's ready to break the principles of a chaste woman. And a chaste woman, it doesn't mean she never has sex. She only has sex for procreation, and she follows the rules and regulations. So in this case, Diti, because of her desire to have a child, is not thinking clearly, and therefore she's willing to break the rules and regulations of how to have a good child out of her failure in controlling her mind and her senses. Even though her husband is a great personality, he's a great devotee, but he also is weak in the sense that he's attached to his wife. Although he can explain to his wife what is the right thing, he also knows what is the right thing, but in a moment of lust, he breaks the principles that he knows he should not break. And it's because of his attachment, false attachment, let's say, false attachment to his wife. If you're really attached to your wife, then you should insist on following the regulative principles together. If you're falsely attached due to material, let's say, attachment to beauty or different characteristics that that are superficial. See now, superficial means like whenever, let's say in India or the United States, there's a wedding anniversary, or there's a wedding. The relatives, especially the women, they go to a hairdresser, they put on makeup, they look like 10, 20 years younger for the wedding. And they look very, very, as attractive as possible for the wedding. Now, is that a good thing? Well, I don't know. It's not really a good thing, but it's something that just ladies do for the wedding. Am I right or wrong? Like, like almost all year long, they never put on the lipstick and all that stuff. Now for the wedding, they did a lipstick and the eyebrows and this thing and that thing, clothing and the perfume and the whole thing. So this is something that is, let's say, traditional amongst some Hindu families. But in the case of Lord Shiva, now Lord Shiva and his wife Parvati, if they were invited to a wedding, everyone would be shocked because whenever there's a wedding, everybody's talking, and the men are saying, "Well, you got any hot stocks that I can invest in?" Say, "Well, you should invest in this thing or that." The men are talking in one part of the room, and the ladies are talking in another part of the room about how their kids are doing good in school and the vacation that they took. So the whole thing is mundane, unfortunately. Everyone's happy to see each other, but everyone's talking about how they're progressing in material life, mostly. Right? Is that right or wrong?
Yes.
So here we see the problem that death is right behind them, following them every minute, and they're ignoring that, and they're talking about mundane things and desiring mundane things. Right? It's a very dangerous way to live, but people want to show off their material success, and people who are materially successful, they become attractive to other people. Other people are attracted by them, with their material success, and they want to know how they did it, and so forth. Okay, so Lord Shiva's uncivilized, devilish characteristics are never abominable. Now, this is a hard thing to understand. If he looks like he has uncivilized, devilish characteristics, how can they not be abominable? Therefore, don't judge a person by their clothes. Like, for example, there were two men in the steam room. So they just had a towel around their belly and sitting down and sweating. And they didn't know each other. They just went to a steam room to get a hot bath like that and sweat. And so afterwards, they take a shower and then they start putting on their clothes. And then they go to the front desk. They gave their valuables, like watches and other things, and money and so forth to be kept. Then they go out and get into their car and drive away. So one man was, he wasn't really rich or anything like that, but he was middle class person. So he was sitting in the sweat in the sauna and sweating, and there was another man in there also sitting down and sweating. And then afterwards, they take a bath, and then they go to the locker room where they open up their locker and they start putting their clothes on. So one man was like a middle class man, and the other man happened to be very, very rich. But you can't tell when you're sitting in the sauna sweating. You can't really tell that another guy is very, very rich because you don't have your clothes on. You don't see what kind of car they have. You don't see. You can just talk to that person, But usually, unless you're going with a friend, you don't really talk to anyone. So there was this middle class man, and there was this very, very rich man. So once the rich man came out of the sauna and he was putting on his clothes, the other man, who was just middle class man, he started noticing the clothes the other guy had, and then when you go to the front counter, you usually put your real expensive things like watches and rings and all those things. You put them in a box, and they protect it for you, so you don't have to, so you won't lose it or be stolen. These things are stolen sometimes, in the sauna or in the room where they put their where they dress and undress, because sometimes there's thieves, right? So they lock up their expensive things in the front office, where they have these little lockers, and everyone's valuable things are locked up. So when this very rich guy came out, and first of all, the other person, the middle class person, noticed the clothes he had, and they were very valuable clothes, very, very expensive clothes, Gucci pants and shoes and this and that, they're all in the thousands of dollars. They're pants you can buy for, $5 or $10, and there are other pants you can buy, for $1,000. So, and then at the front table where all the valuables are locked up, when they open up the valuables and they give it to the person, sometimes there's a watch that costs $10,000, and there can be a ring that costs a lot more than that. Like some of these movie stars or famous people, women wear these wedding bands or jewelry that costs hundreds and thousands of dollars. Like, what was her name? Anyway,
Kim Kardashian.
Yeah, Kim Kardashian. Yeah, she went to Paris, and she was robbed, and they took her jewelry, and that was worth,
$4 million.
$4 million. Right? They were not interested in hurting her. They just wanted to get the jewelry, and she was an easy target.
Easy money.
And she was in a hotel that guaranteed protection. And it guaranteed protection. This was like, I don't know, 10 years ago or 15 years ago.
No, not even that. It's pretty recent.
No, really, okay.
Yeah, that's 2 years.
Anyway, in a few minutes, she lost, $4 million of jewelry. By the way, you should never have such expensive things. You become a target of evil people. Okay. So, Lord Shiva's uncivilized devilish characteristics are never abominable, because he teaches the sincere devotees of the Lord how to practice detachment from material enjoyment. Now, why should we learn detachment from material enjoyment if it's something enjoyable? Well, because in every situation, there's something that's right and there's something that's wrong. And this is education. Children have to learn what is right and what is wrong. Most, and let's say in a bad family, they don't really teach the kids what is wrong. Now you would say, what do you mean? I mean, we try to teach our kids what's wrong, but I know when I was growing up, my father, every Sunday, we would eat chicken. And my father would give me a little glass like that with whiskey in it. He said, drink this so you become a man when you grow up. So I didn't know. I didn't know that was wrong. I mean, that was part of family, right? Family culture. And my father would smoke. But one time he caught me smoking, and started smacking me around. Why did you do this? Thinking to myself, because you do it. So why can't I do it also? So you see, you have to have parents who give a good example to the kids. Sometimes the parents say, "Oh, do your homework right now." They're downstairs watching television. So, the kid says, "Oh, now I understand how this works." They watch television, I have to do my homework. So the whole thing is what example a person gives. So here, Lord Shiva is giving an example of being uncivilized and manifesting what may be interpreted as devilish characteristics, but he's never abominable because he teaches the sincere devotees of the Lord how to practice detachment from material enjoyment. That's the point. How to practice detachment from material enjoyment. Now, someone would say, but wait a minute, if it's enjoyment, why are you trying to take the enjoyment away? Well, because there is bona fide and unbona fide happiness or enjoyment. And this is the problem, that the line between bona fide and unbona fide, or good and bad, or sinful and spiritual, gets let's say blurred in the eyes of people. Like, for example, I was once invited to this wedding, a very nice family. They were the father and mother of the daughter were always coming to the temple. The wife was initiated, the father wasn't initiated. But at the wedding ceremony, I saw the father drinking wine. There's always this toast. So, everyone, has this glass, and they put the wine in it, and everyone starts, touching the other person's glass, with his glass, and they raise their hand or something, and they say something, somebody gets up, gives a little speech, about, this, my daughter is wonderful, daughter, blah, 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 and so forth. And then, everybody takes a little sip. So this was a devotee man who would do at the wedding. He had the glass of wine, and he actually drank it, being overwhelmed. I actually saw a television, not a television, but anyway, I saw Modi at a some kind of a dinner, and everyone was standing up, and they were toasting. In other words, they had glass like this, with wine or something in it. And there's a little speech, and then all the nonsense people that drank it. Modi just went like this, got the glass, put it up like he was going to drink it, and then when everyone else was drinking it, he just put it down without drinking. Well, why did he pick it up? Well, he didn't want others to be to criticize him and say, "Oh, you're a party pooper," So I picked it up, and everyone's going like this, and they're all happy, and then they start drinking. So instead of him drinking, he just put it down very very slowly, as if he might have drank it. So these are situations that sometimes devotees are caught in. Like, you go to a wedding where one part of one half of the people, let's say they're on the bride's side, they're not really devotees. The other half, they're supposed to be devotees. And they get caught in a situation where, there's going to be a toast and somebody's going to get up and give a little speech about, how wonderful my daughter is or the groom is. Have you ever been in those situations? Yeah. And then everyone, puts their hand up or something, or starts, clicking the champagne glass with everybody else, and they drink it. So those are what you would call types of culture things that are not good for devotees, because you'd be breaking the principles. Just like one time, this one person who was a devotee came to see me. He was from California, but he came to Paris, and he was bragging about how he was going to help the devotees make a lot of money so we could purchase a nice building for a temple for Krishna and so forth. So that was his, let's say, his way of becoming. So the whole point was, he said he had a lot of money, and then he wanted to buy a temple for the devotees. So I was asked to drive him around Paris and show him the different buildings. Okay, so he's American, I'm American, but I can speak French and everything. And we're driving around Paris for like 4 or 5 days, and he was looking at different buildings. So at one point, when we were, together, we were together for about 3 days, I think. At one point, he starts talking to me about, well, there's a lot of devotees in California and making a lot of money. I said, oh, really? And he kept on talking about this every day. We were together, I think, 3 days. So finally, he was telling me, and the devotees make a lot of money just by carrying a bag from Delhi to Los Angeles. So, that was the first time where it was like a little bit of a red flag, right? So, unfortunately, I'm a little bit, let's say, snoopy, or I'm always trying to find out things. So at one point I said, well, what's in the bag? It's only some kind of a natural product. I said, really? I said, well, when you say natural product, what kind of natural product? He said, what's a kind of natural product? I said, okay, but what's its name? And he said, well, it's an herb, natural herb. It's a natural herb. But does the herb have a name? He was like, circumventing what it actually is. Yeah, of course it's marijuana, right? And what he was doing, he was trying to groom me to be one of his, let's say,
Downline.
Yeah, the downline. He wants me to, basically, he wanted me to go to India, get the marijuana, and sneak it into Paris, right? So I tried to act as if I was like, really innocent. I said, but isn't that a violation of Prabhupada's instructions to us? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, we're not supposed to be involved with the intoxicants. She says, no, you don't understand. this is so you can have a new temple and you can have deities and you can please Prabhupada by having a new temple and having deities. Well, that sounds really good, doesn't it? This is how they get you to break the principles, you know. They use the word Prabhupada, new deities, this thing, that thing, you know. And you know, people who are not really, you know, let's say trained to follow regulative principles, they say, oh yeah, I should do this because, you know, temple, new deities, this thing, that thing, Ratha Yatra, you know, and we'll have the money to do all those things. Well, no. At one point I said to him, oh, look, I really appreciate you being here. And you know, I like you as a person, but I'm not going to break any principle that Srila Prabhupada has taught us. He says, what do you mean? This is for Krishna. This is for your new temple. This is for spreading Lord Chaitanya movement all over the world. So don't talk nonsense to me. You want me to be a dope dealer, basically. I say, I'm not going to do it. But, you know, they try and, you know, groom you and say all these big words, you know, well, you know, Harinam Sankirtan and the festivals and this thing and that thing. But no, it comes down to engaging in illicit activities that we're not supposed to do. But sometimes devotees get enticed by these type of words and you know, you start meditating on, you know, how you can make a lot of money by just one time carrying a bag from Delhi to Los Angeles, and you make, you know, thousands and thousands of dollars by doing it. That's why it's important to actually understand the importance of following the regulative principles. No eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, no intoxication. So if someone's trying to convince you to sell intoxicants or transfer intoxicants, and you can, and for one trip you can make, you know, $10,000. We should have the fortitude and culture to say no. There are two things that you can say, yes or no. So saying no when something is offered to you that is not permitted in Krishna consciousness means that you're educated. You know how to say no. It's not a negative thing to say no. It's the right thing to say no, right? Most people think, well, if I say no, it's not really Krishna consciousness. That's not true. You have to say no to things that are not Krishna consciousness and yes to things that are Krishna consciousness. Okay, so here, it says, Lord Shiva's uncivilized, devilish characteristics are never abominable because he teaches the sincere devotees of the Lord how to practice detachment from material enjoyment. Now, is there any class in school that teaches detachment from material enjoyment? Answer, no. Right. The most important thing they don't teach. In fact, they teach the opposite, how to have material enjoyment. But in subtle ways, but definitely they're not teaching emphatically detachment from material enjoyment. Okay, so
in India we used to have Maharaj, when
what's
we were
that?
growing up in India.
Yeah.
We used to have one class called moral science,
Mm-hmm.
where usually they taught
The values.
like good stories which are more value based.
Okay.
So they won't directly say stop you from material enjoyment, but at least they'll develop good characteristics
Be
in a
good,
person.
do good.
So you might judge, right? So don't directly say it, but they used to be. I don't know if we still have it in India or not, but when growing up, we used to.
That means you're an old person.
Yes. Yes.
What? Well, maybe they're still doing it. I don't know.
I don't know, yeah.
They have. I mean, they have religious movements in India that try to teach kids good things.
And they used to teach fables, Maharaj, Aesop fables.
Aesop's fables.
Panchatantrams,
Panchatantra.
those kinds of things in this movie, yeah, yes.
Well, that's what the kids were taught in school. But what were they taught outside of school? You have to learn about that also, right? So there's two schools. There's the outside school and the inside school. And the outside school is usually, very bad teaching. And the inside schools, they're trying to teach the right thing. But there's competition, because oftentimes the outside school looks more attractive than the inside school. When I say outside school, what kids are talking about together, in their recreation time. And then they go back in, and outside they're talking about all kinds of nonsense. And then they go inside, they're trying to learn something, from the teacher. And so it's important that there should not be a difference between the outside and the inside. It should be always focusing on Krishna. Now, does that mean it's boring, or it's not part of the modern culture? Well, yeah, you can say it's not part of the modern culture, always talking about Krishna. Most people, and basically, monkey see, monkey do. It all depends on what the parents are doing. If the children grow up under the influence of their parents and under the influence of their friends. So if both parents and their friends at school and so forth are not really Krishna conscious, then that's what the children are going to be like too. They have to control who the culture in the family, and also who you're letting your children associate with outside of the family, in other words, in school. And you also have to see what is the culture of the teacher. Right? So oftentimes, as part of the homosexual and lesbian, let's say, onslaught of modern, education, they try and take positions as teachers, so that they can subtly groom children to see, their type of life as okay, and part of, let's say, mainstream, trying to make it mainstream, homosexuality and so forth. And they have teachers teaching, sometimes, fourth grade, fifth grade, trying to make it look as if it's normal to have two daddies or two mommies. Okay, so here it says, although he, meaning Kashyapa Muni, although he always associates with Maya or Durga, he is above the reactionary stage of the three modes of material nature, and although he is in charge of devilish, I'm just talking about sheep, I'm sorry, although he is in charge of devilish characters in the mode of ignorance, he's not affected by such association. So that means don't try and imitate Lord Shiva. Some people have abilities like Lord Shiva of doing things that we should never try to emulate, because we don't have the same abilities that he does. But we can learn from him by following certain things that he does do. And what is that? He's teaching detachment from material enjoyment. So that we can, but we can't, smoke marijuana or drink poison. If he can drink poison, he doesn't die. If we even touch a little bit of poison, we'll die. So we can't emulate the let's say, supernatural actions of great devotees, but we can follow the principles that they're demonstrating, and that is detachment from material enjoyment. Okay, so that sounds negative, but actually, when you're detached from material enjoyment, then you can engage in spiritual enjoyment. Now, what's the difference between the two? Material enjoyment, you try and please yourself. And spiritual enjoyment, try and please Krishna. There's still enjoyment. In fact, when a mother and a father see that their child is happy by chanting Hare Krishna, and usually it's very easy to teach your kid to chant Hare Krishna. It's going to be a lot harder once the kid gets into middle school or high school or college, and they're hearing all kinds of atheistic philosophies and nonsense and so forth. But when they're younger, it's easy to chant Hare Krishna, and all of a sudden, it's an easy thing, right? But then we get older, and contaminated by modern education and bad association, and they don't want to say Hare Krishna anymore, right? Not everyone, but in a lot of situations like that. Okay, so we're almost finished. Are there any questions? We only covered one verse and one purport, but
Maharaj, I have a question.
yes.
He said, although he's in charge of devilish characters in the mode of ignorance. What is mode of ignorance for Lord Shiva? Is it because the way he dresses, or he's drinking poison, or whom he's hanging out with? What is mode of ignorance exactly?
Well, there's mode of ignorance, mode of passion, and mode of goodness. So 3 modes of nature. And then there's Suddha Sattva, this transcendental goodness. So it looks like he's acting in the mode of goodness. What does that mean? It means he lives in a crematorium. He puts the ashes of dead bodies on his body. And then it says here that although no one in the material world is equal or greater than Lord Shiva, and although his unimpeachable character is followed by great souls, to dismantle the mass of ignorance or nations, he nevertheless remains as if a devil to give salvation to all devotees of the Lord. Well, as a devil, what do devils look like? They don't look like a transcendental devotee. They look like they're bad people, right? But it's to dismantle the mass of nations. It's a very nice phrase. So that means to go into places where usually you should not go to, like a bar or places like that, and to try and help the people in those bad places. Not everyone can do this, and not everyone should try and do it, but Lord Shiva is able to do it. Right? He's not affected by any, let's say, any situation he can. So, although his unimpeachable character is followed by great souls to dismantle the mass of nations, he nevertheless remains as if a devil to give salvation to all devotees of the Lord. So how does that make sense? He nevertheless remains as if a devil to give salvation to all devotees of the Lord. Well, that means that he's willing to do things that are considered abominable, not abominable, but not let's say what normal people would do, so that he can associate with fallen people and gradually bring them to Krishna consciousness. In other words, if you want to join a let's say group of bad people, usually there's some initiation ceremony where you get stamp burned into your arm or something. Do this to do that. So Lord Shiva is willing to do things like that in order to teach these really fallen people to become devotees. Now, we shouldn't try and imitate Lord Shiva because we don't have the same powers as he does, right? So, but we can learn things from his example of trying to help, people become Krishna conscious, but not try and imitate him because he has powers that we don't have. So never try and imitate a person who has supernatural power because we'll never be able to emulate him.
Maharaj, who is an example of somebody like a fallen person that Lord Shiva brought into Krishna consciousness?
Mhm. An example of Lord Shiva bringing someone to Krishna consciousness.
Like a fallen person.
Mhm.
Because we have a lot of stories, at least what I've heard is like Ravana was a Shiva devotee. Like he gives them a lot of boons or supernatural powers,
Mhm.
but they still remain like that.
Well, there's Parvati. Parvati is his wife, but he never gives her anything. Right? But she has so great, let's say, admiration of this, what you would call renunciation, that she follows him. Now, Parvati was not a bad person, but I mean, would you, if your husband doesn't give you anything, no credit card, no car, no house, would you marry? Would you stay married to that person? No. But see, in Lord Shiva, he doesn't give his wife anything. Right? And everyone's worshiping his wife for material opulence, and she's giving it to them. But she herself doesn't have a house, doesn't have any, things that we would think is necessary for a wife to have. And Lord Shiva doesn't give her anything, but she never leaves him because she's enamored by his renunciation and sincerity. Right? So, your question was: are there any examples of
All the people
yeah?
that Shiva, Lord Shiva has brought to become a devotee.
Well, I'll have to answer you tomorrow.
Yeah.
I
So
don't-
Hare Krishna, Supriya Mataji, are you there online? Because I know yesterday you had a question that you wanted to ask.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah, go ahead, Mataji.
1 second. I had saved that question. So,
I have it if you.
yeah, Prabhuji, can you please read that one? So I had texted that to you.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
like.
So does being in KC make you not to give up on something which you think is right? Like, for example, temple construction, and also when to know to give up thinking maybe Krishna wants something else. How to know? Like if you
Actually,
feel
Hare
upwards
Krishna
and it's
Maharaj.
not going anywhere. Is that maybe you can add more color to that?
Yeah, Maharaj. Yesterday there was in the evening Bhagavad Gita class. You were specifying about how being in Krishna consciousness helps you not to give up on something, and you are persistent to achieve the goal which you have thought about. So based on that, I had this question like. Does being in Krishna consciousness makes you not to give up on something which you think is right? Like in our case, temple construction. But then when to know to give up thinking maybe Krishna wants something else? How to know?
Okay. Well, if what you're trying to do is something desirable for pushing forward Krishna consciousness, then giving up on that would be a mistake, even though it's very, very difficult. But it has to be something that is actually beneficial to Krishna consciousness and to humanity. So Prabhupada, he did not give up. Although the first 2 years he was in the United States, he was not making much progress at all. But after 2 years, then it started to make devotees and get things going to establish Krishna consciousness. So there's always going to be some period where it looks like you're not making any progress in preaching, but you shouldn't give up. And I remember, my wife and I, we were in France, and I was preaching all the time. And she said, well, let's just go back to the United States. These people are not going to become devotees. I said, well, no, we shouldn't give up. She said, no, but they're not, you're just wasting your time. Good thing I didn't listen to her, because, at a certain point, there was an explosion of devotees in France. So you have to have a vision of what is potentially possible, and faith that with Krishna's help, you can do something that seems impossible. Especially in a country like France, where everyone's drinking wine, and they glorify the bad things in Krishna consciousness. They glorify it as wonderful, and everybody grows up with that culture of sense gratification, big time sense gratification. Well, that's all over the world, but the French type of sense gratification seems especially attractive. But no, at one point we were able to make a lot of devotees in France. We're still there. So you have to have a vision of what's possible, and you have to depend on Krishna. One time, in the early days of our preaching in France, there was this one man that kept talking to me every once in a while. He said, you will never make one Frenchman a devotee. Your philosophy has nothing to do with French culture. So you're wasting your time. You better go back to the United States. You're not going to do anything. And then, as time went on, periodically he comes nosy himself around to see what was going on, right? At one point, he saw there's a lot of devotees, and he was really upset that we were able to do that. But in the beginning, he kept every once in a while he'd come and talk to me, and because he'd see me in the streets distributing books and things like that. He'd say, "You're wasting your time. No Frenchman is going to accept this type of life of Krishna consciousness." Well, we proved him to be wrong. Hare Krishna.
Hare. Any other questions?
Did we answer her question?
Did you get the answer to the question, Mataji?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Very well. Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.